distress. Alchemy is not just for distress. It's not a, I mean, Jung's alchemy even, it's, he wrote it as a sort of companion to his philosophy and psychology. And his, I think another reason why people relate to Jung and really sort of have an affinity for him is because of that, because he didn't only write psychology for distress. He wrote it for growth and expansion of the self. We had a professor, he likes to call it the expanding edges. And I think that's a really great sort of analogy of that. It's, you know, I never like to look at the spiritual path as so much of a path. You know, it's, you know, you picture it in your head and it's usually this sort of forward and upward angle, right? When we think about our spiritual ascension, you know, it's like this gradually rising, or a ramp that we're walking up or something like that. And I really don't think that's accurate. But I like the expanding edges analogy. I think that we're sort of the way I look at it is we're not on a path that's up forward and upward path. How could we be when time, you know, if you're a good spiritual traveler, you understand the nature of time is not linear. It's not what it appears to be. It's this physical body that we're in, this vehicle, that forces that illusion on us because it ages and dies, right? So we count the days. You know, really, when we counting a calendar, it started out as just a way of understanding when the next time the sun would come, because you were going to die without it, right? And then after a while, it became when was the next winter going to come, because we had to plant in time so that our crops could grow. And so it really was an almanac. It was really a way of governing our behavior by the changing seasons and the movement of celestial bodies. People really lose touch with that nowadays because it's a given. You know, we have calendars and we have, you know, the news comes on and all those things that happen. You know, morning comes and our alarm goes off and we make coffee and we have to go to work or whatever. It's just part of this sort of system that we've created. But really, underlying, if you look back not that far ago in history, the old almanac was your life source. People needed those almanacs. You know, there's thousands of them archived, going all the way back to the alchemists. They were some of the first real great almanac writers because they kept record, and then they watched the stars. So whether you believe in astrology or not, I think it's obvious that there is something to astrology. There's aspects of it that I don't know how much I really how much weight I put on them, but we know for a fact that the moon affects us. I mean, it's a proven fact. We know it. We watch the tides. We know that the moon turns the tides. So if the moon is powerful enough to turn the tides of the ocean, then it's obviously powerful enough to turn the tides of a human being, right? So we are affected by the moon. We know that for a fact. And we are affected by the rotation of the earth and its conjunction with the sun. We know that. We'd be dead if it wasn't for that. So there's proof that astrology is a thing. Now, whether Mars is associated with war, Venus with love, etc., that's really up to each person individually to come to a conclusion about. I would say there's something to it. But I think it's important that if you're gonna put any sort of value and weight on exploring astrology, it should be at least from a standpoint of reality. We all are our own psychologists. We're our own therapists. You know, when we don't have the time, the resource, or just don't want to go and seek some sort of counsel, and we have to, you know, we call it coping mechanisms that we have to learn and train ourselves to, and I guess make a blueprint for what's going to make you the most comfortable mentally, psychologically. So, and Manly Hall always said it. He said, you don't need a counselor, you just need to learn how to use your brain and identify the brain and mind and make them agree. That's really it. So if you imagine that the mind is not the brain, there's functionalities with the brain, but it's not the brain. Many cultures believe that the mind is actually in the heart or it's in the solar plexus. They believe there's others that believe it's never in the brain, that the brain just has a sort of the antenna I was just talking about to pick it up and pick up the frequency and identify it in terms of images and words that we can grasp in the physical. So I guess the most important thing I'd have to say is about that is being your own best counsel is probably the biggest value in all alchemical study. I mean, we all know that, you know, you can't be good to anyone else if you're not able to be good to yourself. And I don't mean like loving yourself and all those things. I mean, good, like stabilized to the point where you're able to communicate and receive in a way that's not jaded or obstructed by what's going on inside of you. There's always going to be things that tear at you, that hurt you, that are difficult. But if you're able to keep those things into a sort of compartmentalized structure that allows you to still function, I mean, that's a great first start, really. You know, depression is the first sign of a breakdown of that ability. You know, it's when the mind is so burdened that it shuts the brain down. It won't allow the brain to do what it does. And any of us, I'm sure all of us have probably experienced depression on some level. I know I have, and anxiety. You know, anxiety is a real easy identifier, and it happens all the time. Almost every day, right? Sometime in almost every day when you feel anxiety start to rise. You know, the skin kind of heats up, and you know you realize it's right there waiting for you. But other times you could face something that would normally cause much more anxiety for you, and it doesn't for whatever reason, because you have structures in this sort of mind-body scaffold that were prepared for it this time, right? People that have a stressful job, a job that will just run one of us out of our minds, and they just sit there relaxed all day and doing it, it's nothing to them because they're conditioned to it, conditioned to the ability to take all that stress and sort of wrap it up in a bow, set it on the side of their desk, and get their work done. You know, for us, it might be impossible. We'd be there all day and get 2 things done, you know, and leave there ready to freaking jump off a bridge or something. You know, there's a lot of people that, you know, have, and then those same people might step into our lives and be stressed out of their mind. So it's really an individual thing. It's for each person to work on. That's what alchemy gives, is a sort of point of reference for really anything that can come, and a place to identify something that's not internal in your placement of objects, people, and ideas. It sort of gives you an object with meaning outside of that you can project onto whatever it is that's going on. When we talked about the 7 steps, I wish we would have spent more time on that, but I'm giving you guys a ton of stuff to look at if and when you do want to, because it's important. It's when you're studying things like that in alchemy that are kind of specific, it's important to take a lot of time. You can't learn alchemy by just reading it and reviewing it and learning it. You only learn alchemy over time and with experience, sort of in parallel to your knowledge of it. So what this workshop has at least done, I hope, is exposed you guys to some of that. It doesn't really matter how much energy that you put into it in the future. It will be there in your mind's world. It will be there in the archetype world as a point of reference, not only for when difficulties come, but also when growth is needed or inspiration comes. It's very inspiring stuff.